Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, dear friends, welcome to you all to the accompanying event to the exhibition Sauerbruch Hutton, Drawing in Space at the Jovan Foundation. And here is the presentation of the catalogue together with a conversation among international experts. Maybe, and many of you have been in the audience here, have been also at the opening of this exhibition here at the Aedes campus weeks ago, because Sergei Jovan, how you say it's the director of this, the name is Jovan Foundation, so you know he is the most important person, but he unfortunately could not be here today. And last time we had the opening because it was so terribly cold, and we don't want that everybody has to stay outside. And many of you are here have already experienced the exhibition. The director will talk a bit about why we have the opening of the catalogue weeks later. And had nothing to do, we are not perfectly in time. It has a special reason. A very warm welcome to the esteemed protagonists of this evening. Nadja Bartels, director of the Jovan Foundation Museum for Architectural Drawing, is giving a short introduction, followed by a speech by Niels Bingham, very wonderful, colorful, absolutely in the way Matthias and Luisa loves it. He is from London, architectural historian, curator and author from London about the history of architectural drawings as a starting point of the conversation in which Niels, actually I Googled how to pronounce you. We know each other very well, yeah. But how to pronounce you, I said it was Niall, but it's Niels. Niels is correct. Niels. Okay, so I learned something and you learned something. And and his lecture about the history of architectural drawing is a starting point of the conversation in which Niels is also taking part. The other distinguished participants are Kirsty Bell. Where are you?
Here. Kirsty.
Kirsty is right. Kirsty. Yeah. So, Kirsty Bell, writer and art critic from Berlin, Luisa Hutton and Matthias Sauerbruch, founding partners at the Sauerbruch Hutton office in Berlin, and Dirk van Heuvelen, Associated Professor, Department of Architecture, TU Delft, who is also moderating this conversation. Thank you for that. What brings us all together again is the importance of the architectural drawing in the design process as a conceptual tool, its artistic form of expression, and ultimately also its aesthetics and beauty. My role tonight is to welcome you at the Aedes campus for this special get-together, but also to give thanks once again for the possibility to curate this exhibition together with Luisa and Matthias. You are more than friends, and I was happy that I was asked to do that. And we know us for more than nearly 40 years. And I also want to thank for the wonderful collaboration with everyone involved in the exhibition, which caused so much public interest and positive resonance from the media. I think we all are happy about that, and we are in the middle of the exhibition. Is this right? Yes. So you all have the chance, but Nadja will talk about this, to see the exhibition and to experience it. Finally, a big thanks to all working for the preparation of the catalogue we are presenting today, which turns out, in my view, as a masterpiece. Now it's my pleasure to give the word to the director of the Schumann Foundation. Please, Nadja, the floor is yours. And have a good evening.
Dear Christine, thank you very much for the introduction and for the very warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you very much for joining us tonight for the launch of this wonderful book, which accompanies our exhibition, Sauerbruch Hutton, Drawing in Space, which is shown at the Museum for Architectural Drawing around the corner. Unfortunately, our founder, Sergei Choban, cannot be here tonight, but I'll try to do my best to give you an insight into the exhibition and the book, a very short insight. So we are very delighted to have this wonderful cooperation with Aedes, and of course Christine as a curator who, together with Matthias and Luisa, made a wonderful exhibition. And our museum will be open tonight till 9 p.m. So after the talk, you are very welcome to go to the museum and see the exhibition yourself. So what is actually the reason we are launching the book today after the exhibition started? Well, it is an unusual exhibition. It is unique, not only very contemporary and not only very colorful, but actually for the first time we have an installation at the museum. And this installation enables our visitors to be a part of an architectural drawing. And of course, this installation had to be in the book. We had to have images inside. And so this is actually clear that the images could only be included into the book after the exhibition opened. So now this wonderful book contains the images of the installation, and this book can be purchased tonight here at Aedes, at the museum as well. And at the museum, also credit card payments are possible, and you have a unique possibility that this book can be signed by Luisa and Matthias, who are here tonight. So please use this possibility. And now I'm very much looking forward to today's talk and discussion, and I'm very delighted to have Neil Bingham here, who is a renowned architectural historian and a very good friend of mine, who will be giving a talk, a presentation. And after the presentation, we'll have a discussion, which will be moderated by Dirk van den Heuvel, whom Christine kindly introduced. Dirk teaches architecture at the Technical University in Delft, and he is also head of Jaap Bakema Study Center at Nieuwe Institute in Rotterdam. He is curating exhibitions, and he was a curator of the Dutch pavilion at the Biennale of Architecture in Venice back in 2014. And furthermore, he is also author of numerous publications. Just to name a few, for example, Habitat, Ecology, Thinking and Architecture, published in 2020. And Jaap Bakema and the Open Society, published in 2018. So now we are very much looking forward to see the presentation by Neil. Neil, very welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 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 Thank you very thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be invited here and to be asked to speak. Louisa and Matthias asked me to speak for 10 minutes. So I am now going to cover 4,000 years of architectural history. As a starting point, because of their architectural drawings and their career span, you can see that their architectural drawings begin with hand drawings and then move on to now completely the computer, isn't it? So I thought I'd take as a little point, like a quick history of the pen, because this is what now we've left behind with architectural drawings. And these are Matthias's and Louisa's pens. They're Reframe pens, which they used at the beginning of their career, until about the 1990s, I would have thought as well. So I've called this quick 10 minutes, Meet the Ancestors, because the instrument for drawing in architecture. Just 4,000 years, very quickly. So the repeatograph that they were using was the latest in the drawing instruments of using line and using ink in architectural drawing. And it was introduced here, the rotary itself, in 1953. It's a German production. Very fiddly to use, and it came with many different types of nibs as well. But before that, the question is, what did architects use to draw with? Well, they used a ruling pen. And you can see I brought a set of my own ruling pens, my own set of traveling drawing instruments here, which I am going to, like show and tell, pass around for you to look at, so you can look at them. And the one we're really looking at here is this piece here, the ruling pen. Now, these came in around 1650, 1700 or so. Oh, health warning. When I first got the set, I pricked myself. And, feel free to pull them out and have a look. So with the ruling pen, this is a technical instrument used by architects. And the way you use it is, you take the ink and with a brush, you brush the ink into this little, between the two little metal spears. And there's a screw that you can open and close the spears with. So you can make the lines narrower or wider. And so in this set that I've got, you can take, you have a lathe and you can move it and insert it with a pencil or the what into a compass. So you can use it in different ways. So it's terribly fiddly to use, I can't tell you. And for the architects, the old architects over 200 or 300 years, I mean, to master that, the drawing pen, and I'm sure some in the audience here have themselves done this. So my drawing set I picked up about a year ago. It's English, not very expensive made. It cost 9 shillings, it says on the inside, you'll see. I figured out it belonged to somebody called Ernest H. Spalding because he's written his name on the inside. And to date it, I was able to go to the lining of, you'll see inside, there's a paper lining with these words on it. I Googled them and discovered that it had been torn from this book, Madame de Staël's In Germany by a German, so from 1814. So my set is about 1820, I would say. So it's quite fun. So what did they do before the drawing pen? Well, it was the age-old use a quill, right? And this is the way they, during the medieval period and right on till the scientific period, they would just take a goose feather, which was the best. However, if you were really lucky, you got a swan's feather, right? That was like really luxurious. And you pointed it up and put it in. So something like this drawing here, a decoration for a house facade, about 1530, used to be attributed to Hans Holbein. It would have been done with a quill pen like this. So this is an architectural drawing that we recognize as an architectural drawing. It's an elevation, and it's also got a little perspective coming through the doorway. So you have an elevational perspective going on. And this is a very critical few decades, 1530, 1540 or so, because this is the period of the great scientific instruments when they took off, right? This is the period of global exploration for the first time, so people needed instruments to navigate with, and it became, instrument makers started to come out, especially here in Germany and in London, the two great centers of instrument making. So here we have a drawing. Here we have a drawing. Pleasure. Here we have a drawing by a Bohemian engineer, actually, who's working for Henry VIII, creating fortifications in 1840s, because it's the period of Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, and Francois Premier and Henry. Big fighting going on, right? So they needed instruments for the fortifications to design them. But you'll notice on this, what's interesting is you can see the buttressing here. I took this photograph in the British Museum, in the British Library. You can see he's got measurements because things had to be exact. So this is the moment that we really start to see architectural drawing as we know it evolve, because this is the period where measurement comes in, and that's what an architect uses and starts to use as well. So before this, what did they draw with? Well, they drew with the quill pen. And the first architectural drawings that we speak about really date from between about 1350 to 1425, and they're here in Germany. In Strasbourg Museum, there's a huge collection, and these are drawings that are about at least this size. And this is a drawing that was recently purchased by Strasbourg for 1.75 million euros. And it used to be in their collection, but it got lost during the Second World War. But you can see the precision of this, and this is done on parchment paper. In other words, it's done on the linings of sheep, the skins of sheep. So what usually happens is to get such a precise line with that quill pen. Here's another example. They would take a ruler and a sharp instrument and rule the parchment out, making a blind line, and then take the quill and fill it in. So you can see in this drawing, I've circled where the compass has gone in. So there's the holes to make the circles or the semicircles going around. And also here, a line going down the center, which has been ruled but not filled in and used to line. So this is, again, the first and early architectural drawing. But paper doesn't come in until that invention period, with somebody here in Germany making a printing press. So before this, you had to kill a whole sheep, didn't you, to get a piece of parchment. So that's expensive. So what did they draw on? They would just draw on tables. They would get out a trestle table. So you see a draftsman here, and he would line the table probably with some soot or chalk or something, and then get out his drawing instruments and then just draw on the top of the table. Discuss it, rub it out, go on. That's why none of the drawings exist anymore from this period, except for a few exceptions. And this is, there are a few exceptions in France, but the best examples are in Britain, in Wells Cathedral and York Minster. And this is at York Minster. It's a room, a tracing house, they call it. And these are little rooms that would be set up around building sites where the masons would be. And they would create a floor. Do you see the floor here? It's a gypsum floor, very thin. And then they would get out their drawing instruments. And this is the master mason of York showing it to me. And you can see the lines? And these exist from 500-600 years ago. Amazing. So they've got out their giant compasses and the lines, and the whole floor, here's a bit. So you can see, I've taken a photograph over there, and you can see it's a bit of a window beam done here, and I've flipped it, a modern drawing of it here, so you can see it at the far side, what's doing. And they would just then simply rub it out. So this floor has, for over a period of 50 years, has all these architectural drawings all over it. But usually these rooms were just destroyed, so they're lost. Isn't that a beautiful one? About this large it is, too, for a cusped window. So these are really, architectural drawings really don't exist in the early medieval period. So architectural drawing is a late medieval. So this, I just wanted to show you this drawing. It's by a monk, nothing to do with an architect, and it is the most famous architectural drawing from the medieval period. And it dates from 820. It's about only this large. It's included in a letter of one monk writing to another monk saying, here is my ideal plan for a monastery. So you can see it's done with red ink, and the church is in the center, and everything is all laid out. This is a national treasure in Switzerland. So it's called the St. Gall plan. And before that, at the very beginning, the Romans, of course, they're building, aren't they? Right? What do they use? There's a few scratchings left of architectural drawings, but on walls, but not much. We know from Vitruvius, for example, that he had paper, that was papyrus paper, when he was writing the 10 books of architecture. And he says, I've included some drawings in it. So that would have been in a scroll form. So we knew that they drew. But again, mainly, they just used a plate with a stylus. So this is a piece of wax, right? And they would just write on it. And I took this photograph in Pompeii in the autumn, and there's a lady holding her, her stylus and her little board with it. And they would just rub it out. So again, we have no drawings from it. And here, again, to show in the Roman period that they did do, architects and builders did do drawings, is a very famous monument that's in Kansas City. It's a funerary stone about this large. As you can see, he was a builder, an architect, but he was a thinking architect, not just any old architect. For this is an any old architect sign in Pompeii that we photographed recently, and it was a signboard. You can see he's got an axe. He's got a level as well, and what looks like a pair of scissors on the top are, of course, it's a lucky phallus, isn't it? It's a lucky penis. So, to show. And I was going to suggest that maybe Sauerbruch Hutton might want to take this up for your next project. But so this is a rough builder, and if we go back, this is a real one, because he has got, you can see, he's got rolled papyrus, and he's got an inkwell attached to his a belt where he's keeping all his pens, and it's even got a little hook to put on his belt. So this is a thinking, working architect. And finally, the most famous and oldest architectural drawing that we know of, and how was it made? This is a statue of Gudea. It's in the Louvre. It dates from about 2000. So this is pre-pyramid period. And he's a ruler in Mesopotamia. And on his lap, it's about this large on his lap, is a drawing of a temple, the inner workings lines. So you can see the walls of the temples, even with the buttresses on it. And what lies along the side? But his stylus. Thank you very much.
it on? Yes? Okay. Hello everyone. Great to see such a full house here. I'm Dirk van de Heuvel. And I wanted to ask Louisa, Matthias, to join us here on the stage for a conversation. Neil and Kirsty, please join us on the stage so we can have a conversation. I mean, this is yes. I will sit here. Yeah. Neil, thank you for an amazing tour, helicopter view of the history of drawing, going back to Mesopotamia. It's quite a challenge to bring it now here to Berlin and to the presentation of the book, but why not? It's architecture, ancient discipline. Do we have a copy of the catalogue here so we can show it? I like to wave it because the event is for the launch of the book, right? For the catalogue, it's very important. I've seen it just at Louis and Matthias' place. It's a beautiful book, but it's again a special product, not just a catalogue, but you made it with extra images and with photos of the installation, but also with other interior photos and work of you included. Neil, if you don't mind, I'm going to park your talk for now, and I first wanted to ask Louise and Matthias to say a few things about the book, and if it, what it means for you now. Now you're in the middle of the exhibition. You've been working really hard on this book, I know. I've witnessed some of it. And
Someone very important in the audience from our office, Isabel Hartman, thank you as well, who's put a lot of time and effort into it. It's very emotional. I mean, it was emotional for us to see the exhibition when it opened, or the day before it opened. We were more or less ready at the beginning of February, and to see all our drawings in one room done, not all our drawings, but many of our drawings in one room downstairs, and to see the experiment, which seemed to work on the upper floor. And then now we have another change there, but to see the book yesterday afternoon, or about 5 o'clock I saw it, and obviously we'd worked quite hard with it, and so had Kirsty with her essay, and for me it's actually quite emotional to see it as an object. But it is different to the exhibition, of course. It's a book and it's not a space, and it will live on after the exhibition has come down. And there's also, we decided to make some differences to the exhibition. It's not just a representation of some of the drawings or most of the drawings in the exhibition, but we also took the liberty to show some of the spaces in relation to the drawings, so there's a sort of crossover between 2D and 3D in it. So it's not just the drawings as representation. Do you want to?
Well, what can I add to this? I mean, it's we have this tendency to turn everything we do into a project. So that's kind of inevitably making things more complicated, but also more fun in a way, and more interesting. And I think what we were trying to do here is to communicate without many words, of ours anyway, a kind of, let's say, panorama of our architectural interests and sort of routes that we tried to go or did go, or where they led us to, and so on. And it's all visual communication, and so the whole thing is organized visually. It's the logic, so to say, if one can speak of such a thing in this context, is the association of image after image after image, creating relationships, creating a storyline, if you like. In that, I think this is very different from anything else we have published beforehand. And as Louisa said, there's a wonderful team that was behind this, including Hendrik, our graphic designer, who's always good for an experiment. So it turned out something different, I think, which we like a lot.
yes, well, very good. Which gives me now the opportunity to go to Kirsty Bell. Thank you for explaining what's behind the book as not just a catalogue, but another step in an ongoing project. Kirsty, let me introduce you first. You're not from the world of architecture. You're a writer, art critic. Some people may know you from a book, The Undercurrents, A Story of Berlin, from 2022. And there's another book, The Artist's House, which is also a very intriguing publication. And you wrote the essay to the catalogue. It's a stunning essay. I was very happy to read it. And you bring something else, again, to the exhibition and to the catalogue, I would say. And you come with a reference to the reds in the work of Matthias and Louisa. There's many reds, many colors, variations. And you link it to a book of Merleau-Ponty, The Visible and the Invisible. So it's a very different story from the technical bit we just saw. But first we go to the visible and the invisible, and then we go back to the technical. We will manage. I will get you there, yes. So one of the things you say and show very eloquently is how the drawing, which we usually see as something visual, it's not just visual, it's also tactile, it's about the senses, it's about experience, it's about relationships. So maybe you can tell us a little bit what you recognize in the drawings of Louisa, Matthias and Sauerbruch Hutton.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. And you started off by saying I'm not of the world of architecture, which I'm not, but I am in the world of architecture, like we all are, so I think that that's really my starting point for my kind of appreciation of Matthias and Louisa's buildings and their drawings, that I relate, I can relate to them because I live with buildings, and it's something that I think about a lot. And so what I thought, what I find particularly interesting about the exhibition here, and why I was really thrilled actually to be asked to try and find a way to talk about these drawings, to write an essay about them, is because they don't feel at all technical to me, and it was very interesting to look at all of these instruments and also, look at these straight lines and circles and numbers on drawings in Neil's presentation, because actually I don't think there are any numbers that I really notice. I mean, I'm sure there are, but that was not the primary thing that I was noticing on the drawings of Louisa and Matthias and Sauerbruch Hutton, that they're really, to me, I was just excited about the kind of broad range of expressive possibilities that they suggest, through the different techniques that are used, but also through the suggestion that they're making that architecture isn't something technical and static, and that it is the way that we relate to it is sensual, because it's part of our environment, and that's what led me to reread this beautiful essay by Merleau-Ponty. I mean, some of it is quite dense, but it then has these moments of incredible illumination in explaining the nature of our perception, how we perceive. And, so for me, that's something that's very kind of uppermost in this collection of drawings here, that we're not just looking at I mean, I don't even know actually what the correct technical terminology is, but elevations and, those sorts of things. But, also these kind of sidelong ways of approaching a building, or these moving perspectives, these kind of 4D drawings that they're called, which introduce an aspect of time, or haiku drawings, which are very reduced to kind of bold lines and patches of color. So for me, it was, these kind of other expressive possibilities that kind of approach the idea of architecture as part of a more kind of sensual realm.
Now, I know you already wrote or talked about the work of Sauerbruch Hutton in your other book, The Undercurrents, because you were writing about, if I'm correct, the COVID time, and you were looking at Berlin in a new way. And one of the things you saw was a very special red project, and it was the GSW building as a variation in the city that attracted your attention, and this brought you to the office of Sauerbruch in Hutton. So this is another very interesting way how architecture is part of the world of experiences in everyday life. So can you say how that happens?
Well, you know, this for any of us here in this room that live in Berlin, we all know this building. You know, in the center of Berlin, right near where the wall used to be. I mean, it's so emblematic in so many ways, and just gorgeous. You know, with the GSW building with all of these pink and red and russet blinds that move in this kind of vibrant, moving collage. You know, it's just. It's people are very, you know, I'm not the only person that feels a great affection towards it. And then when I was writing this book that has to do with Berlin, and it takes a very specific perspective because it's the view from the window of the apartment that I can live in, and with various different kind of historical architectural elements. And I can see in the distance of my view, which looks from the west, basically directly east, I can see a little corner of the GSV building. So, for me, that was really thrilling. I mean, it's thrilling that I can see that every day, but it was even more thrilling that I could bring it into this book that's talking about, you know, the history of Berlin, partly through the, you know, through the landscape, through what we live with. Yeah. So then, Matthias and Louisa very kindly indulged me, and we had a wonderful, long conversation, not only about this building, but also about their experience of Berlin as an architectural landscape.
Yeah, and one of the things you really stress, and I think this is completely in line with also what when you talk with you about architecture, is the aspect of relationality of architecture. That as an architect, you're not aiming for an autonomous project, but you're working in a larger field, and you're transforming the field, intervening in a field, right? So and there's a multifocality at stake. It's not just one thing that's happening. There's a lot of things happening while working on a project. Now, I'm going to try to make that bridge because one of the beautiful things of the tracing house, but also the one from Mesopotamia, obviously it's very different from your work, but when you think of Merleau-Ponty and phenomenology, it's quite amazing to see how the drawing and the material and the house, or the tracing house, are almost completely one, or they are there as what maybe Kirsi would say, a relational sort of assemblage, very different from today. But it is about transforming material with technological means. And a community of builders that is at work and building cities and churches and other interesting stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me? I don't know if it's technology sometimes. It is technology, but I think it's more tools at this stage, you know, in a lot of ways. And I just wanted to respond to Kirsty about, you talked about the tactile and the architectural drawing being tactile. Well, in a funny way, if you think about an architectural drawing, uses all our senses, doesn't it? It uses the tactile, as you say, the touch. Of course, it uses the visual. That's quite obvious, right? We can hear the drawing. It makes a sound as well. And we can often smell the drawing, can't we? But can we taste a drawing? So I highly recommend, if you ever get the chance, to lick an architectural drawing. Have you ever licked at any of your architectural drawings? Have you? I did it. I've done a few, actually, very well known. So have you ever no? Licked? No? Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you do that and you draw it. It's the closest. Tastes like chicken.
But it takes us back to the rotring pen, which you would lick when it would get stuck. No?
Yeah, and the ruling pen, you're always is doing that, and also erasing line, wouldn't you, with, yeah.
I still have a tattoo on my chin somewhere of when I was using blue ink for the setting out in my .14 Rotring, and it got me on the chin somewhere, and I'm tattooed. It's there forever.
So this is the sensual part of the. I know you like it. I agree. It's totally there. But I never licked a drawing. It's, I'm now. Yeah, this is a joke. I'm not going into that too much because you worked at the RBA Drawings Archive, so I have a different look at the RBA Drawings Archive now. But tools.
Actually, I've looked at them in quite a few archives.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah, I know. But the tools and the technology, it's a very important thing when you look at the drawings. Also, when you go to the Choban rooms, you can see how technology and tools, how they change over time and make your drawings differently. So I was curious how you would view this aspect of the tools in your drawing. What can I call them? Experiments, or yeah, it's a playground for you too, but it's also a testing ground. What do the tools do to you? How do you work with them?
Obviously, in the exhibition, it's sort of roughly chronologically organized, and so you could argue approximately the first half of the exhibition is more or less dominated by hand techniques. In other words, sort of freehand pen or ruled pen or patches or cutouts or whatever, and then bit by bit, elements of these drawings get replaced by computer techniques. So I mean, like for example, we started to, instead of putting color films on white paper, we kind of started to scan the ink line and the white background, and then we started to put on the color patches on the computer and so on. So bit by bit, more and more computer became part of it. I mean, it has obviously that has potential. I mean, we did it because it was that much easier and that much more efficient and so on and so forth, and the range of colors you can achieve and all of these things. I mean, before that we had kind of a blue one and a red and a green Pantone sheet, you know, and every sheet costs so much, and so you kind of first use the ones that you have and so on. I mean, obviously with the computer you have all the RGB and or CMYK or whatever range of colors. So I mean, we went with a kind of pragmatic kind of use of the tools that were available reasonably in price, and then of course bit by bit we were also starting to work in teams on these drawings. So whereas at the very beginning of the exhibition, the drawings that were just more or less done either by myself or by Luisa, because they were student works, and then there's a period when we started to work together, and there are several drawings in there where we literally both did something on that. I mean, one did the line, the other one did the color, or the other way around, or whatever, or variations of the same thing. And then slowly we started to work with third people. I mean, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I mean, there are some quite elaborate drawings where, I don't know, probably 6 or so people, because they were also developing over time. It's not sort of like we start on a Thursday and on the next Friday everything's finished, but it's sort of start something and then hang it somewhere and it gets forgotten and we pull it out again, and it simply takes time. And there again, computer is obviously very useful because you don't have to watch out that the color doesn't dry up, or the kind of, I don't know, the fixative is sort of not good enough, or all of these kind of things that played a big role at the beginning. There was, for example, there's one drawing in there which is a so-called true-to-scale print. For a long time, I mean, I'd say until the mid-80s or so, all the drawings that you saw coming out of London that were watercolor, like Madelon, Friesendorps or OMEG or so on, they all came from one printer in Holborn who could do, because we had dye techniques, you know, dye line normally, which and then the paper is coated and you can't use it, you can't watercolor on it. And there was one printer who could do black line on watercolor paper deformer tracing original. And
It's
then
the
everybody
trade-off.
started. So,
The secrets.
so Peter Cook's drawings, for example, Zaha Hadid's drawings, Ron Heron, you name them, they all went to that one printer.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good story.
And
Yes.
Peter Salter as well. There
Yeah.
was a rumor that there was some gold leaf involved. I'm not sure, because it didn't, I mean, it wasn't outrageously expensive. It was just very expensive. But it was a fantastic thing. And if I can just add one thing to Matthias's quick tour of going from hand drawings to computer drawings and from just ourselves and working with our wonderful teams in the office, is we were sort of tempted, and still are, as you can see in the exhibition, particularly upstairs, to sort of somehow make hybrids between the hand drawing and the computer drawing. So nothing is really just computer anymore. We're looking also on the computer drawings to kind of sometimes simulate a hand drawing, or the lines we do rounded ends as if they were stopped with a pen. You get a round end to the line, etc. So it's somehow creating a mix, and also upstairs in the installation, in the exhibition, a definite mix between analog and digital. It's completely, there are sort of fluid transitions between the two. And I think this scanning of hand drawings into the computer is something that we still do, and it's a technique that some in our office enjoy doing. And can I just say something to your table? That reminded me, when you showed the table drawing, that we used to stretch our paper. Well, first of all, we would cover our tables just to work at them, to turn them from cheap doors into white tables. We put paper on and stretched it with drawing pins, and then you got a table. But then if we wanted to do a big watercolor, we'd stretch the paper on the table again and do a watercolor on it. So it's kind of similar.
It's the artist's way of working,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it's really similar.
If I can just ask, it's fascinating because it's what you said earlier. There was a stage where you were moving to computers very early on, and you were trying to make it look like a hand drawing, even though it was done with computer. You showed me that this afternoon, and I was just, oh, wow, why would you do that? And in a way, I've thought about it. It's like when photography began. Artists used it to do pastoral scenes, to make them look like paintings, wasn't it? So there's kind of this crossover that's going on at that time. And finally, the thing, Louisa was very kind enough to show me and some of my students around this afternoon around the show. And there, you see in the show, there's these lovely big fluid lines and large sections, just of bits of color like that. It's really lovely. And then she said, and they're all to scale, like that. And it was just like, you thought that she just done this, but as an architect, it's all to scale.
Well, that's an interesting remark because architecture drawings. So I saw the whole range now from Mesopotamia to the computer experiments. So usually we think of an architecture drawing as hand drawn on paper. Can we still call the computer drawings, or is that just a semantic question or riddle? You think of them as drawings or other things?
No, they're definitely drawings, because we're thinking through the drawing, or with our team, obviously, because Matthias and I can't operate the computer. I can hardly operate it, but let alone for drawing. And they're definitely drawings, because they're visual documents of lines and areas. And of course, I find it annoying that our teams who are working on the computers, on the drawings that are going to be used to build, they're sort of forced to be exact. And I like the exact perspectives, that's what I was talking about. But I mean, when one's drawing a plan or something, in the old days, you would just change the dimension if the window changed size. These days, you have to change the drawing and the dimension, because the computer doesn't let you make it fuzzy. So there's a kind of difference there.
I can maybe add to this. I mean, it sort of slightly depends on what you expect from a drawing, right? Neil's little introduction kind of put an emphasis on the drawing as the architect's drawing as a technical tool that is A, establishing geometry, and B, is helping to communicate to other makers, craftspeople, whatever. what we still do today every day. I mean, we still we use computers, but I mean, we produce in the end sections and plans, I mean, horizontal and vertical sections through material where we're indicating the thicknesses and the details and all of that. That's still in full swing, if you like, and hasn't really changed that much, except that, of course, today the detail of information is much denser than it was on these examples that you were showing, because there were certain conventions and certain kind of knowledge in the craft that the architect didn't have to add. I mean, today particularly in Germany, we kind of draw everything, like which is sometimes good and sometimes not so good. But as far as the exhibition is concerned, we're talking also about a slightly different category of drawing. It's much more like Kirsty's window. I mean, she starts her book, which is about Berlin, Berlin as a city and Berlin as a kind of environment and all of that, with the view through her kitchen window, right? And you could see the kitchen window as a kind of metaphor for a drawing. It's kind of looking into something that wants to be read, that wants to be understood, that has depth, and that kind of offers you a certain richness of narrative, I guess, of sensuality, of discovery, all of these things. I mean, I'm not saying that we're achieving this with every single drawing, but I mean, it would be certainly something we would be striving for, both in terms of the sensuality that it communicates through the technical and the kind of the medium, if you like, and the mere emotional kind of correspondence, but also in terms of a kind of certain ambiguity, in terms of ambiguity of information, like a poem would maybe not be spelling out exactly what is at stake, but it would, through certain words, create relationships which then kind of to be filled in by the viewer.
Yes, beautiful. I see you want to respond to that. Yes.
That just remind me of this very interesting point in the exhibition, is that actually some of the drawings were made retrospectively when the building already exists. You know, so just as you know, the reason for it is completely different. It's really more of a kind of it's a record. Yeah. Drawing. But they're still. I mean, record sounds like such a technical term. It is a record, but they're so expressive and quite wild in a way, you know, because it's this desire to kind of return to the starting point, to the kind of conception and the imagined version of what the building was reaching for when you've already been through this very long and complex and you know, process of actually making it happen, you know. And for me, that was really unexpected and kind of illuminating, actually.
Yes, thank you for that. No, I'm really in also what you touch on now, the desire behind the drawing. As a last question, maybe before we open up the conversation for questions to the room. And you already mentioned all sorts of drawings have different sort of functions, roles, etc. But I'm really curious about this notion of intentionality behind the drawing, because it's not always the same. Kirsty already talked about desire. You mentioned poetics, almost like a game of associations, and each viewer would see something different. But what's in it for you? What is the intentionality behind the drawing for you? And I'm also curious, because you want to achieve something with the drawing. A drawing is not just a record. I don't agree. It's a record, maybe. Yeah. It's a projection. It's a projection into the future. So I'm really curious, next to the intentionality, what is the drawing of the future? To ask a small question.
Well, it's a bit of a complex question, but I would say we're not always, sometimes we are making the drawings retrospectively because we feel we haven't made a drawing or more drawings of a project which is really important to us that has been built maybe, and yet we don't have one or a series of drawings that really sum up the ideas, that somehow we went through the whole process without doing this key drawing at the competition stage or during the process of making the building. So we feel we need to do it. For example, the experimental building in Heilbronn, which I explained to you and your students, where we explain through one drawing a rather complex building. Whether anyone else understands it is another question, but we understand it. So for us, it's like a pressure, a drang that we need to do it to kind of explain to ourselves or to express ourselves. And of course, one can describe it in words, but one shouldn't need to. You know, the drawing stands for itself. That's why we didn't want to name any of the drawings or put building names beside the drawings. And then just on the expressive thing, I mean, many of these drawings, particularly the early ones in the room, are of lost competitions that I still feel quite passionate about. Both our designs, but I feel, in a way, even more passionate about the drawings, because they were, when we were starting off in Berlin with a lot of optimism, we still have optimism, by the way, but it somehow, we were trying to find our way, and whether the competitions were in Berlin or southern Germany or whatever, it was sort of the freedom and the joy, a bit like being students, when you have endless, lots of time to make your work. It's such a luxury. And so it was somehow like the drawings for the Salem College School in southern Germany. It was sort of, on one side there's a big painting, or there are other more sort of graphic drawings of perspectives of this school in the landscape. But it was just the joy of imagining how it could be with our own particular graphic technique. And in fact, I do go back to that place every year when I do my fast, and I see the school that was built in the landscape. The landscape's beautiful, but I still imagine our school there, which is more through the drawings, actually, than my memory of the precise design. So there is a kind of passion there that stays.
It's also, I mean, drawing is really a tool of thinking in a way, because unless you've seen it, or I mean, for me at least, I'm not such an abstract thinker. I mean, I'm not a great mathematician, so I mean, I really need to see at things. And if I kind of draw it for myself, and something comes out of it, maybe not quite what I intended, but somehow something comes out of it, it starts to talk to me, and there's a certain dialogue, and then I start to correct it, and I think about it differently, and it's a tool of discovery in the end. You kind of doodle around, and you kind of find something that you hadn't really thought of, and it helps you thinking. You're faster in dialogue. So, I mean, that's one thing. The other thing is that our job is, in many ways, testing. I mean, because the projects, they're very complex, and there are lots of stakeholders, and you're never quite alone with your decisions, and it always takes forever, right? It takes much longer than you think, and you have to basically persevere for years in order to get to where you thought you wanted to be in, 2 months or something like that. And in this process, you continuously develop your design. I mean, it's not, I mean, of course, the kind of first big questions or so on will be maybe resolved in an early stage, but I mean, as you go on, you continue to add and add and add. I mean, questions of detail, question of materiality, kind of finer proportion of things, and so on, and you go on and on and on. And sometimes it feels like you're treading water, you kind of feel, why am I doing this for the 5th time? And, and the client is asking me to revise it, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's very, very good to just stop and kind of make a drawing, just try and summarize. In a way, it is a record, but it's more kind of summary of all the ideas that are somehow in there already, and to make it visible to yourself and to your team to understand, we've got something. It's not just boring work and repetition and so on, but we're really building something up that is worth it.
And some of those drawings are in the exhibition, so the drawings that take you out of that process of negotiation and compromising, and then to recharge the project, as it were?
I think so. I mean, there's, for example, I mean, the one, sorry, do you wanted to say?
No, carry on.
One drawing comes to mind, which is it's of a project that is nearly finished. It's on am Hallischen Ufer, which is U-Bahn-Möckernbrücke, next to the Postcheckamt, next to the high-rise. It's a project that the clients call die Macherei for whatever reason. But anyway, there's a very, very simple building of ours. And that whole project has a long story, which I'm not going to bore you with, but it's took forever, and we started off with, I think, 8 buildings or something like that. In the end, we built 1, and whatever. But that one building, I mean, as it was going then through construction periods, and it's also that takes time and site and everything else. And there was a moment where you just felt somehow we have to encourage ourselves about this building. You know, it's worth it what we're doing. And then these beautiful night drawings appeared, which show the building as a reflecting object in the kind of night traffic, and that was enough to get us going again. Yeah. You know, so sometimes you just need that. Yeah.
But also, I have to say, it's not only inspiring us and our team, but I think it's also inspiring the consultants and the client. I mean, usually in the best sense it does, because it pulls us all together. Oh, yeah, that's what we're aiming for. So it's really useful in terms of communication.
You want to add something?
I was just going to say anecdotally that I pass that building every day, and I've been witnessing its coming into being, and you know, those drawings do a really good representation of it.
Okay. So drawing is a lot of things. You draw what you don't know yet. So to start thinking about it, and a drawing reminds you of what you wanted to achieve, right? Yeah. Okay. Questions? Really curious what you want to ask to the people here on the podium.
May I ask in German?
Yes, of course.
Ja. Herr Sauerbruch, Sie haben das genau ausgedrückt, finde ich. Wenn Sie mit der Hand skizzieren, fließen die Gedanken hin und zurück. Und Sie korrigieren oder fortsetzen. Kann man mit dem Computer skizzieren?
Also ich nicht. Es hat aber auch damit zu tun, dass ich kein so richtig toller Computer-Operator bin. Also ich habe mal so ein bisschen, da gibt es eine Zeichnung, die ist, glaube ich, im Katalog, ist, glaube ich, nicht in der Ausstellung. Das ist eine auf einem iPad hergestellte Handzeichnung, sieht aus wie eine Handzeichnung, ist auch eine gewesen. Ah ja, okay. Aber es ist über den Computer gegangen. Ich persönlich finde das eher störend, ja, weil dann habe ich nicht kapiert, habe ich den falschen Layer und was weiß ich was und die falsche Farbe und muss es irgendwie, also das Ding fängt an sozusagen ein Eigenleben zu führen, während wenn ich einen Bleistift in der Hand habe, dann habe ich da keine Probleme damit. Also für mich ist es viel einfacher von Hand so als so ein Doodle, und wir machen das auch, wenn wir untereinander uns unterhalten über was weiß ich, die Konzepte, die ja gerade im Gespräch sind, machen wir am laufenden Meter solche kleine Diagramme oder manchmal eben kleine Perspektivskizzen und irgendwie unbeholfene, weiß ich was, Kritzeleien, weil das am Ende präziser und schneller ist als die Worte, die man dazu erst suchen muss. Insofern, die Handskizze ist da nicht zu überbieten aus meiner Sicht.
You got a lot of fans.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and your explanation. And we were lucky to see the exhibition just before we came, so the impression is really fresh. And what I would like to respond is when we came to the exhibition, I had such a, I felt struck by energy, yeah, and it was such a playful impression I got. And so listening to you when you say, okay, we are working on a project and we do this work which has to be exact and has to be day by day done very correctly. So then we just say, we need a break, and we come back to that drawing and try to get the idea of a project. And then, so I really respond to this. So that is, I just wanted to give you the feedback that I felt what you said. Yes, thank you.
Oh, there's a question here. Maybe you can come here so the people here see who you are.
My name is Conrad, to introduce myself. Neil, I enjoyed your oh, look around the corner.
It's only nice, only nice people.
Room full of nice people. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, the 3 ones. Thank you, Neil. I enjoyed it so much. It gives a totally new meaning of an office space where planning happens when we think about tracing rooms in the current age. Luisa, I'd like to ask you about color. Right now, he made the joke about licking the drawing, and there's a sense of describing color by its taste. And I am intrigued by the complexity of your colorful arrangements in the complexity as is. But is there a way to describe color as you like to see it? Is this purely visual? Just erase it, try again, mix up new colors? The question would be, how would you describe the colors that you like to use? For example, in the GSW building, there are many colors, and many colors could be described as a flavor of, let's say, the reddish type. Could be strawberry mixed with something else.
Back to flavor, you mean?
Yeah. Is there a way you would like to describe the colors that you like to use?
Well, in fact, there is. But I hope to begin with, when you said you meant the plural you, because
a bit closer to your.
Many people think that it's me who does the color. It's both of us who do the color in continuous conversation and critic and looking with our teams. So anyway, that's just a point. And we do have nicknames for colors, and I like to use a lot of dirty neutrals or dark dirty neutrals, and of course we use red families and green families, whatever, but for each project somehow names get invented that somehow stick with some of the colors, and of course all colors are relative, so whether you see a pink next to a green will look very different when you see the pink next to a strong red, etc. So it's all kind of relative, and our perception is changing and improving all the time. But when I see colors on clothes or in the city or in a book or whatever, I do tend to kind of register where it is on. We use a huge color atlas that doesn't have enough colors actually, but I do have a relatively photographic memory of where the different ones are. That doesn't really answer your question, but...
Oh, it does. It
does
gives
it?
me
Okay,
an
good.
idea how you...
Yeah, and food does come into it.
Thank you.
More questions or comments? So maybe I have a really curiosity thing. How do you make the drawings together? Because it came a little bit about colors, but how is the interaction happening? Yeah, you don't have to say everything, but just because, well, I'll give you an example. I know Louise and Matthias through the Smithsons, and also Neil Binging. Peter Smithson introduced us. Yes, yeah, and for who don't know it, Louise, I worked with the Smithsons, and when you go into the archive of the Smithsons, you can clearly see the drawings by Alison and the drawings by Peter. There are even projects where the back facade or the front facade is done by a different handwriting, and you clearly know, oh yeah, that's Alison and that has been Peter. So, but with you two, I'm not so sure. So how does that? Who is pushing who? How is the magic happening?
Well, I don't know about the magic, but I mean, you can, if you know what each of our drawings look like, you can identify pretty easily actually who's done what. Yeah, and we have, I don't know, you might noticed in the catalog and also in the exhibition, we have sort of labeled the drawings. It sometimes says LH or it sometimes says MS, which is simple, but then we also have sometimes LH-MS, and then we also have sometimes MS-LH. So, and that's kind of like where the emphasis was. For example, I mean, some of the some of those kind of acrylic sort of paintings. They're, for example, obviously by me, but they're part of a competition, and we have endless conversations, and we, even in the making, you know, setting it up and which angle and we discuss every detail. And so the execution is to some degree is not so much the conception, but more the execution, if you like, in these instances. And that's true for also some of the so-called blobby drawings, so the haiku drawings, where we work with these thick lines and the color patches. And some of those we were literally pushing from one word to another. One was doing the line, the other one was doing the color or the patches or the photographs that were set into it, and so on and so forth. So there are quite a few which are true collaborations, actually.
Yeah, that explains it very well. I mean, we have continuous conversations on nearly everything, and yeah, we're our own critics. Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at the beginning of the show, you see very clearly the different hands. So.
There's a question.
Ja, erstmal ganz herzlichen Dank für diese ganz gehaltvolle Veranstaltung. Meine Frage an Sie alle da auf der Bühne, Sie sind tätige Architekten. Unterrichten Sie auch an der Universität, Fachhochschule und, falls ja, ist dort die Architekturzeichnung ein eigenes Fach, die Architekturzeichnung von Hand? My question is, you're all practicing as architects. Do you also teach architecture at the university? And if yes, is architectural drawing part of the architectural education training at the university? Thank you.
Well, I'll just begin. I'm an architectural historian. I'm not an architect in any way. So I approach it from a historical manner, as you can see. So. And then I teach a history of architectural drawing in more than 10 minutes.
I'm not a practicing architect. I'm a practicing writer. So, but I do also teach, but not architecture. I teach art, history.
I don't teach at the moment, and I have taught architectural design, but also the drawings that go with that, and freer drawings as well as some. I was a so-called technical tutor, but I didn't teach technical drawings, really. I taught expressive drawings. It was too tempting to do that. So basically, whenever I'm teaching or whenever I'm with somebody from the office, I hope to inspire that individual through their own powers of drawing and observation and self-critic that they can develop themselves and to hopefully get joy in the making.
Also ich habe relativ ungefähr 15 Jahre an verschiedenen Universitäten gelehrt, und da war, also Gegenstand war immer irgendwas, weiß ich, Baukonstruktion oder Gebäudelehre oder Städtebau oder Ähnliches. Aber die Zeichnung als ein Medium, was natürlich alle Bereiche durchdringt, haben wir eigentlich, wir haben auch gemeinsam gelehrt in Amerika, haben wir versucht zu thematisieren, und vor allem haben wir auch, also vor allem jetzt gegen Ende, also ich bin seit, 5 Jahren nicht mehr oder so dabei, aber wir haben versucht, diese Konventionen aufzubrechen, von denen wir jetzt heute Abend noch gar nicht so richtig gesprochen haben. Es ist ja das Rendering, ist ja im Grunde genommen die übergreifende globale Sprache der Architekturrepräsentation, die in der Ausstellung überhaupt nicht vorkommt oder fast gar nicht. Und das hat auch damit zu tun, dass wir das für eine Art von Klischee halten, für eine Art von, sagen wir mal, relativ banale Konvention, obwohl es also handwerklich nicht unbedingt einfach ist. Es gibt da wirkliche Unterschiede. Es gibt Leute, die das fantastisch machen, andere nicht so gut und so weiter. Aber trotzdem ist im Endeffekt so dieser pseudorealistische oder pseudofotografische Blick eigentlich eben sehr, wie soll ich sagen, banal, vereinfacht. Und um das aufzubrechen, haben wir beispielsweise unseren Studenten die Aufgabe gegeben, 4-dimensionale Zeichnungen zu bauen, zu machen. Ja. Ja, und es gibt kein Vorbild dafür und dann muss man anfangen, darüber nachzudenken, wie man das machen könnte. Also gemeint war natürlich, dass die Zeit Bestandteil der Wahrnehmung ist und dass man die Dinge immer in Bewegung wahrnimmt und dass man nie irgendwie eben eine Ansicht oder eine fixe Perspektive hat, sondern man immer gleich mehrere Perspektiven gleichzeitig und eine periphere Vision und so weiter und so fort. Wie kann man das alles zusammenbringen? Da haben wir selber auch einige Versuche gemacht, von denen auch einige in der Ausstellung hängen. Aber sozusagen diese Kultur des Zeichnens zu pflegen, halte ich auch in der Ausbildung für sehr wichtig.
Yeah, it's nice to read in the introduction how Serge Joban also writes about this. And say, yeah, I started this initiative, the computer's coming in, what is the value of the architecture drawing? And I think indeed when you go to all sorts of universities and academies, there's really a constant rediscovery of what you can do with drawing, maybe because some people are tired of always looking at the screen. But yeah, I think this is a trend. So in that sense, the drawing is that I think you can also see that from the responses to the exhibition, that people are really, energized by it, right?
Yeah, I can just say it's interesting because if we look at the ages of people here, my students are of a period where they're all born after the computer, right? So to show them an architectural drawing like we grew up with, this is like somebody said to me the other day, a typewriter. My aunt had one of those, It's so an architectural drawing is in the same, is the same category.
Okay. There was one question here, and then I see there's someone raising her hand.
So I wanted to talk about that intentional omission of the rendering in the whole exhibition, because that's something lots of architects had to struggle a lot the last 10, 15 years, because renderings are prejudice from the client's side. And since you have such a particular representational style, which is more or less based or relies upon abstraction a lot, then how did you manage to, let's say, survive the time where the renderings were really a necessity? Or do you just do the renderings and say, okay, we have to do them, but you still do your own stuff at the side?
Yes, I'm afraid to say yes, that's the truth. We do renderings, but I think we wouldn't, we would maybe use them if we wanted to explain a particular project, if we're kind of talking about whatever, and we explain that in great detail, we might use rendering type drawings. But as drawings, we're not so proud of them, no?
I was on a jury recently, and together, us jurors, when we met with the client in the Vorjurygespräch, whatever it's called, is that we persuaded the client to ban renderings from the presentations, that no architect could hand in renderings. And in fact, I get jealous when I look at competitions from the 60s, 70s, 80s, like the Liverpool cathedral competition or whatever, because all the architects do very simple or did very simple line drawings and rather, in a way, similar plans and sections, elevations. And as a juror, it's so much more pleasant to judge from these rather simple drawings. And we all know what a line drawing perspective, how it shows the volumes. You don't need to go into depth in materiality on a competition, and that's demanded these days, and it's ridiculous because it takes your view away from the essence and the urban setting and the volume of the building in the urban space. So I think it's damaging in so many ways. It's terrible. But yeah, unfortunately, we sometimes blur them and sort of do a bit of pixelation to try and make it less clear.
Da gibt es ein fantastisches Foto von dem Wettbewerb für die Olympiaanlagen in München 1972. Da sieht man Franz Josef Strauß, für diejenigen, die nicht so alt sind wie ich. Franz Josef Strauß war Ministerpräsident von Bayern, ein super konservativer, richtig harter Knochen, der auch so eine derbe Sprache hatte und die Leute irgendwie Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay, and the other person is Hans-Joachim Vogel, who's a social democrat. I mean, so Franz Josef Strauß was the CSU, kind of right conservative wing of the CDU. So to say, Söder would be his equivalent today, but he was much tougher. And Hans-Joachim Vogel, who was quite a visionary social democrat, who was at that time the mayor of Munich and had later on he was a minister and so on and so forth. And Egon Eiermann, who was head of the jury. And they're looking at a model which is the size of this glass, and it's a kind of lady's stocking, kind of pulled over a few kind of sticks, right? And it sort of vaguely, if somebody tells you, vaguely resembles what they later on built. It was the competition entry of Frei Otto and Günter Behnisch. Right? And on the basis of the evidence of this kind of really, let's say, slightly kind of modified working model, they made this decision for this kind of, huge investment. I mean, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of reputation, in terms of, it could have all gone horribly wrong. And to kind of make that step on the basis of something like this requires imagination, requires, I mean, obviously courage and vision as well, but it requires a certain willingness to understand and kind of sense something that is not there, right? And in a way, that's something that we're trying to do with our drawings as well.
And I would just say the atmosphere that came through, or the potential of these curved forms for that amazing competition entry in the late 60s, no? Early 70s, late 60s. It's still there today. Obviously, we all know these buildings, and they're so emotional, and so they somehow draw you into the space and the landscape, and that's what one tries to do with architecture, but also with the drawings and with the communication, whether it's a model or drawings, is somehow show the atmosphere and what the sort of potential is.
There's a question over there.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for making color into buildings and out of the buildings, because especially in Berlin, as the weather is like today, for example, we need a bit of color if we don't have it on our style. So thank you very much for lighting up or color up our life. And this is a question because architects are doing buildings for people who are working there or living there. So what is the feedback on the people who are living there, and are there changes in colors from the 70s or 80s until now? Are there any changes of the feedback? I just want to talk about human beings and who are working in your buildings, because it seems to be very special. I've never worked in one of your buildings, unfortunately, but I worked in other buildings who are architectural buildings, but who are not really inspiring.
Well, we have feedback. Well, our first large buildings, other than the smaller projects in London, were getting finished in the mid-90s, so it's a bit later than you mentioned, from 70s and 80s. And we do have quite a bit of positive feedback from the people who work and from the people who walk around in the city and just observe the buildings. During the discussion processes with the client, it's sometimes tricky because everybody has an opinion on color, which I think is fine, and that's how life is, and we all have opinions about everything, and color is a very emotional thing. So sometimes during the design phase, you get individuals who say, well, I don't like red. But in general, we find that if we're persuaded by our own design, and it's not a fast process, it's very, very iterative. We take ages to come to the final decision, although it looks easy at the end, which it should do. But then we find that if we have confidence in our own design, and we're experiencing this with one or two of our own projects at the moment, then I'm confident that we can explain to the client through a few words, less than tonight, fewer words than tonight, but just through the examples and the mock-ups and the models and the drawings, that it's all a good idea and they should trust us. And that does, touch wood, tend to happen. So, yeah, but the feedback is generally positive. Do you want to add?
It's also, I mean, the question of color, I mean, there's nothing that is not colored, right? I mean, even if somebody tries to make a totally black and white building, there's many types of black, and there are also many types of white. And there's always nuance involved, and in many cases it's not really deliberate, it just happens. And I think to be aware of these kind of nuances, and then also to kind of develop into a maybe more stronger and more courageous color palette, I think is a very good exercise. We had just one anecdote. We had I don't know if anybody of you knows Hennigsdorf by any chance. It's a suburb of Berlin, and it has a little city hall which was designed by us. It's tiny town hall really, and it's right next to 3 former Plattenbauten, kind of sort of socialist housing slabs, which were converted or kind of embellished in inverted commas after the reunification, and they put sort of insulation on the outside and lots of color. And the color is really awful, and it can go really wrong, right? And so we have next door to it, we have the city hall, and we felt, what can we do here that's, gives this building a certain degree of authority, because after all, it's a public building. It's probably for many people the most important. They go and get their subsidies and I don't know, all sorts of business to do with the government or with the administration. And so it's an important place, and it somehow should have a certain gravitas, if you like, and it should definitely not look like these sort of colored buildings next door. So we decided to have a range of a very red brick, and there's a sort of blue-gray, which kind of goes very beautifully with the brick. And we more or less kept the outside to those 2 colors. And then we presented this and so on and so forth, and we realized that the mayor was not really happy. Somehow there's something wrong and so on. He finally came up to us and said, well, he was very disappointed that we didn't spend much time on his building, right? And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, there's no color. So I mean, it slightly depends also what's meant with color. It's as I say, I mean, there's hardly anything that's not colored.
Okay. A last question there, maybe.
Yeah, you just speak. Hi. Hello, like everyone here, thank you for your presentation. Really enjoyed it. Oh, sorry. Hi. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a fan of color. But I'm just wondering, lots of things are going through my head, as I'm sure everyone else is thinking, and I'm an architect and been in practice for many years. So I've seen the transition from hand drawing to digital and enjoy all of them for different reasons. But my question really is, I guess if I have just one, is, and maybe for the historians as well, because now we can go from digital modeling direct to fabrication and really omit drawing altogether, does anyone foresee, maybe in a historical perspective, that this would possibly be at some point omitted from our practice? Thank you. Thank you.
I've heard this before, and I don't have an answer, so maybe the architects can tell me.
Back to the future. What's the drawing of the future? Rapid prototyping, other stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I think what's quite comforting in a way is that all these kind of technologies, when it comes to it, they somehow don't work, right? And there's always problems, always somehow misunderstandings, the interface is not working, and so on and so forth. So I don't know, before we really have this as a working mechanism, that something is being modeled in Revit, let's say, and it goes straight through some database to a manufacturer. At the moment, I can't imagine it. Maybe this is a European problem. Maybe in China it's already happening, but I doubt it actually. So I mean, before it really works, I think we still need hand drawing or drawing. I mean, on a kind of much more direct scale, but also, I mean, the question is, I guess if you're a digital native, maybe you can really do everything on a computer. Maybe by just using different programs and so on and so forth, you can achieve similar effects as we described earlier about the dialogue between the drawing and the hand. I find that the computer produces many alternatives very easily, but it's too many in the end. I mean, it's very, very difficult to separate it out and to kind of come to some conclusion, whereas when you're drawing, there's more efficiency involved. I mean, more economy involved. You're not drawing more than you absolutely need and so on. You come, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you come to conclusions faster. It's quite often that we have conversations and I say, sorry guys, I sort of have to sit down at my desk and have to kind of try and draw it, and then I come back an hour later and somehow know what I want. It's just a tool to sort your thoughts in a way.
Okay. Yeah, I said last question, but maybe you have last urgent remarks or questions. Oh, I see someone here. Maybe.
But I was wondering if you have any people who are trying to draw with artificial intelligence. Is there anything in architecture which points into that direction, that architects may not be drawing in the future anymore, but may be prompting a machine to draw for them? What do you think about that?
Quite possible. Quite possible. I was in a lecture 4 weeks ago or something like that, and was having conversation with a colleague, and during the lecture I was showing the Mestre museum district, and these elevations, ceramic elevations with beautiful colors and varying formats and so on, and I was showing them a sequence of variations that we had made, and there were about 50. And they were kind of like running through in the PowerPoint show as just like slowly changing from one to another and so on. And it looked like a computer program actually kind of trying to establish, you know, while thinking sort of thing. And then somebody came up to me and said, well, you've made all of those by hand. Yes, we've made them all by hand. But and he told me, well, you can connect, you can connect Rhino with ChatGPT, and then you can direct it vocally with voice control, and you can say, no, a little bit more left, no, more red there, yes, no, not too much, a little bit back, and so on. I don't know if that works. Fantastic, why not? Yeah, it still doesn't help to sort out your thoughts. It's more like an efficiency tool, I think.
But I think and everybody in the office knows, but one needs printouts. The screen, it all looks too perfect and too flat and too much like anybody else's drawing. And somehow if something is printed out, I find it's like a text as well. I can see it more critically, get the pencil out straight away, and my brain is working with the paper and the hand to kind of work into either the drawing or the text. I find something that's on the screen, it's sort of presented as too perfect, and it's difficult to see mistakes, or one doesn't see even the typos, or I don't on the screen, but I see them on the paper. And it's the same with drawing somehow. It somehow comes alive for me when it's on the paper and not digital.
That's nice to end it. It comes alive on the paper, yes. Okay. Thank you so much for a really engaging conversation on architecture drawing. And before we have drinks and you can visit the exhibition and the new scene, please a warm applause for these fantastic speakers here. So Neil Bingham, Kirsty Bell, and of course Louisa Hutton and Matthias Sauerbruch.
Thank you. Matthias and I have to add a big thank you to Dirk van den Heuvel, who came over literally for one night to moderate this discussion and see the second part of the exhibition. So we're really grateful. Thank you.